Welcome back to the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Retrospective. Today's episode, I'm looking at Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Keep Going Blazing Adventure Squad, translated as Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Wildfire Adventure Squad, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Let's Go Stormy Adventure Squad, translated as Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Tempest Adventure Squad, and Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Go For It Light Adventure Squad, translated as Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Radiant Adventure Squad. And by that, I mean I'm actually only looking at one of them, because this marketing strategy is very good. Let's go! Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Adventure Squad. I know some of y'all might be tempted to skip this section of the retrospective, but I encourage y'all to stay, as this can arguably be the most interesting part of it. This is quite a unique game with a lot of firsts for the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series that most thought started in future titles, alongside mechanics that are completely unique to it. There's a reason for this game's obscurity. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Adventure Squad was released on the online Wii shopping channel in August 4th of 2009, coming in 3 versions which have been flavorfully fan translated as Tempest, Radiant, and Wildfire Adventure Squad, and if being exclusive as Wii shopping channel software, aka Wiiware, wasn't obscure enough, as I have just hinted at, it was not released outside of Japan. Thusly, an adventure squad of their own has come together to allow the ability of many others to discover this game. And what this master rank adventure squad successfully completed was nothing short of the highest grade of tasks. The English fan translation, released on April 28th, 2020. I would like to thank everyone who came together to create this translation, as without it, this would have been a lot tougher for me. It wouldn't even have been possible to give a fair analysis of this game if not for these heroes. Fan translators are absolutely legends, and in my eyes, might as well have created an entirely new Pokemon Mystery Dungeon for me and many others to play. Truly the greatest of teams the world of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon has ever seen. I also love the splash art drawings for the 3 games when booting them up, drawn by the one and only Special Agent Ape. Watchers of this channel may be surprised to hear that name, recognizing his contributions in other games that I have talked about. And I'll save my Special Agent Ape talk for another video to not distract from everyone else's contributions, but I like the art, it's cute, and it shows that extra effort and passion the people of this project had for this. As heard many times before, I think it's time I address the fanfy in the room. If any of you Pokemon fans found that wordplay funny, but yes, this game is split into 3 different versions, something never technically seen by Pokemon, whose scam tactics usually just involved splitting one game's content into 2 separate versions and then waiting some years before releasing the actual completed game. With 3 separate versions of the game, they all have their own exclusive list of Pokemon, meaning the number of Pokemon has been greatly split into thirds, funneled exclusively to their own separate versions, alongside dungeons and even the aesthetic of the town the game's story is set in. Funnily enough, before starting this series, I was planning on choosing Tempest Adventure Squad, but that was before I made up my rule during Rescue Team to not use any water starters. which considering Tempest Squad mostly focuses on those characters, I knew I had to go elsewhere. The version I did end up using is a story on its own, I'll explain in a bit. It's more complicated than y'all would think, but yes. To point towards the more obvious thing you all have been noticing, it's the graphics of this game. This is the first Pokemon Mystery Dungeon to venture the world of 3D, and to be released on a home console as well. Yeah, we only got one screen this time. So what the happened to the Pokemon? Like, dear God, why do they look like that?
What have they done to my boy?
Well, a little less than a year before Adventure Squad was the beginning of the Pokemon Rumble series, which is, I guess, a beat 'em up, sure, taking the idea of Pokemon being wind-up toys. I was surprised to find out that this was an actual whole series, like they got multiple games outside the Wii. I don't think people liked these games. I thought they were kind of fun. Knew someone, like, back in 2010 who owned the Wii one. I can't really remember anything about it. It like had a gacha-ass system, and all you would do is fight waves in precedingly harder arenas of enemies. Pokemon only had like 2 moves. Yeah, I'm never gonna get back to it. So yeah, this style is definitely hit and miss depending on the Pokemon. Some Pokemon look incredibly odd, others look pretty normal. I think it's pretty easy to write this game off on its Pokemon visuals alone, but I'll be honest, I really enjoy how this game looks. I actually think it's very pleasing. It looks great. And after the first couple of dungeons, I already kind of ignored the off-model appearances of these characters because I quite enjoy the aesthetic of this world. Like, something about the water in this game just looks straight up gorgeous to me. And how the game can create lighting and the different colors of these waters gives a vibe I never really felt in previous games. I know saying this word is going to make half y'all close this video and the other half scratching heads in confusion. But if I must use the F word, I don't know why, but when I look at this game, I think Fruitiger Arrow. And immediately off the bat, y'all are now confused. Spacey, what the hell are you on this time? You know, Spacey, I never liked you and this is the final straw. Okay. Calm down. Fruitiger Arrow is a sort of post-Y2K aesthetic. From my research, everyone kind of just has their own thoughts on what is or isn't Fruitiger Arrow. It's arguably a meme, but when I think of it, I picture extremely colorful nature, water, clouds. The Wii is considered very Fruitiger Arrow apparently, and this game came out on it. I just don't know why I get that vibe, but something about the way this game looks. It's very colorful and shiny at points with some of the items. I think it looks really pleasant. Like, I never played the game, but compare this to how Rescue Team DX looked 10 years later. And yeah, this just appeals far more to me. I will say that if anything looks off, maybe certain textures, like I don't think this screen is supposed to turn purple like that when I'm saving. And from a gameplay standpoint, the map was a little glitched, wouldn't display floors correctly until I paused and unpaused. Just know I was playing this game on my super special Wii. You know, it's a very customizable Wii. And I don't know if I had all the right settings on. So I think they captured basically everything outside of the Pokemon pretty well. From environments, structures, items. Sometimes the 3D objects could kind of obscure paths in dungeons, but that might just be a me problem. It could be said that they just reused models from Rumble, and while they probably reused some, the first Rumble only had Gen 1 and Gen 4 Pokemon. This game has all Pokemons from Gen 1 to Gen 4, which considering the next Pokemon Rumble came out a year after this game, well, they were probably sharing assets during the creation between the games. But who knows, maybe a lot of these character models were made specifically for this game and got reused in later Rumbles. It just feels weird that they couldn't have just used more accurate models. Yeah, sure, time constraints, but I swear, if the Pokemon didn't look like cheap fast food toys, more people would be able to appreciate everything else about this game. Actually, future me knows why. Wiiware games had a 40 megabyte size limit, which is the reason that these games had to use these simplified low poly models. It's kinda sad to think that there was never a future where this game could have been as big as I wished it would be. They really should have just made a Wii game out of this instead of delegating these long RPGs to a simplified small game. How did they think that this was going to work? Like, can I get shifted to a world where Pokepark Wii and Adventure Squad switch places? If I may lay an assumption, this is probably why the games are split into 3. Because there was no way there was going to be enough space to put every Pokemon from Gens 1 through 4 into one game, so thusly they split it into 3 different versions in order to save space. Speaking of things people probably won't appreciate for how different it is from the previous entries, the music. So, when talking about Explorers of Sky, I posed the question of whether a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game is truly a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game without the compositions of Arata Yoshi. And you know, after playing this game, maybe I take that back. I mean, this soundtrack has nothing on Explorers or Rescue Team, but it's quite a unique sound, and it might just be the catchiest PMD soundtrack, but that may just be because there's so few songs and a lot of dungeon themes are just remixes of the same song. Like, just listen to the main village theme. I know this is just bias, but some of y'all will probably be thinking the same thought. I'm not saying Super Mario 64 invented the pan flute, but you know, if y'all wanted to make a video about Mario 64 and didn't want to get clapped by Nintendo for using their music, well, I mean, you'll fool everyone using this song. I do enjoy the music for how short the soundtrack is. It really adds to the vibe this game is going for, being pretty laid back and relaxing. This isn't a game about saving the world, there's no high stakes. It's a game arguably about making others happy and giving people cookies and chocolate. Not much for intense music outside of some post-game instances. Sadly, the OST y'all are hearing now is pretty scuffed. It's the only upload of it I could find, and it's completely out of tune on so many songs. Not accurate at all to what plays in game. Kinda ironic to see the uploader make fun of how incorrect these songs are, when they fail to obtain the songs correctly themselves. I was stewing around for an hour or so trying to get the music files myself, but they're all in .smd format. I know that sounds like a Ligma setup. I tried looking these files up, but nobody knows what I'm talking about. Like, these people low-key just made up a new file format. The only real talks on it I could find is someone from like 3 years ago also trying to get a good rip of the soundtrack, because the one we currently have is ass. I was then tempted to just record the audio myself through game, just revisiting dungeons and replaying the game to get the story songs, and that would probably work, but I'd also end up Magical Girl transforming into a homeless person, because I don't have that time to waste. So in other words, I don't have the financial income to be doing base stuff like that. And yeah, these videos are also kind of a waste of time too, but if I realize the obvious truth that I'm screwed no matter what I do, well, that's a little discouraging. At least let me go down in the flames that are these videos. I know there's like 100 people watching this, so this isn't much of a call to action, but if any of y'all know how to extract songs from this, it'd be nice if there was an upload of it faithful to what actually plays in the game, instead of this kind of fake history rewriting, with so many people listening to these songs being like, oh wow, this game must suck if this is what the music sounds like. So if any of y'all are going to be based as hell and do a proper upload, let me know. I'll shout you out at the end of this retrospective, and it will be the first link in the description of this video. This is sort of nostalgia to how this game looks and sounds, which is why I get that sort of Frutiger Arrow vibe from it. Something about it resonates with me, and I don't mean because I once played Pokemon Rumble and the Pokemon looking like this is why I feel nostalgic. Honestly, I'm talking about everything besides how the Pokemon look. I suppose it's one of those things I can't specifically remember outright, but I can remember that I could once remember it. Memories I no longer have but still exist somewhere within me to be felt. It's surprisingly very enjoyable. The aesthetic and music isn't going to be the only factor of this game I'll be saying that towards. As I believe it's about time we enter the Pokemon world once more with Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Adventure Squad. I have chosen to go with Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Radiant Adventure Squad for this playthrough. Y'all will see why in a second. Starting out with selecting a save file, a first for this series, I'm immediately asked to name my adventure squad. Well, I don't like thinking too hard, so let's just go with Team Love once more. We're introduced to the main hub of this game. Depending on the version being played, it could be the Pokemon Garden, Pokemon Village, or Pokemon Beach. And let me tell y'all, I wish I played Tempest, because the Pokemon Beach is my favorite. I love how this looks. But dialogue wise, the area is referred to a village regardless. We're introduced to the Pokemon world, where the Pokemon live together in harmony. The Pokemon here are very energetic, and while they sometimes fight, in the end, they're still friends. That's how it goes. With just a little talking, everything is resolved. All of us are caring and friendly at heart. The narrator introduces himself as Slowking, the village elder who enjoys going on walks. Commenting on the peaceful weather and day, he's suddenly approached by gamers aplenty in terms of a doublet, Aaron and Swinub. Their friend Shuckle went to an area known as the Dubious Valley and never returned. Which, I mean, I don't know why it would go to a place called Dubious Valley, straight up named like that. Of course, the name of this area is different depending on which of the three versions is currently being played, as each game has completely different dungeons in terms of appearances and what Pokemon can be found there. Which is pretty good variety until you remember that Pokemon Mystery Dungeons are all the same anyways. Slowking isn't sure how to help Shuckle until a group shows up to aid. So interestingly enough, out of all the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, this one has the most starters to choose from. But this isn't a typical choose the hero and partner that you'll have to use for the entire game. All of these 9 characters join the player's roster. Combining the 3 games, that technically makes for 27 pickable starters. The 3 different games don't represent the types as much as it does the colors. As with Radiance, it's not just electric Pokemon. There's normal types and even water types here too, as long as they are yellow. Though with that in mind, Radiance might be the most boring selection. I mean, you waste a slot on having both Pikachu and Pichu? I don't know about that one. Especially considering Raichu is the best one anyways. Despite what I said, for just this dungeon, we need to choose 2 of these 9 to journey with, but we'll have access to all of them afterwards. Seeing how this is my last chance to start off as a normal type Pokemon, I went with Togepi, alongside Mareep. Don't ask about the name I gave to the Mareep, it's a complicated history, okay? Don't get comfortable with these 2. Slowking leads us to where we'll go to enter mystery dungeons. He warns us about the dangers of dungeons, and says that due to Pokemon being hyper or something, they'll attack us on sight. Which, gonna be real, that's kind of the saddest attempt yet at explaining the reason behind enemy Pokemon. Like, y'all weren't even trying with that one. But with that, we set into the first mystery dungeon of Pokemon Adventure Squad. And yes, y'all may have noticed by now that Adventure Squad is the first Pokemon mystery dungeon to not have the typical personality quiz the series is known for, a staple of the series, which honestly, based as in hell, like clap it the hell up, thank God, personality quiz sucked anyways. But I will admit the personality quiz did give the series some identity, and even if unintentional, could have impacts with the questions it could ask. So we're back into that classic Pokemon mystery dungeon we all know. Diagonal moving, Y turning, B dashing, setting attacks. You all know the vibes. Nothing too new yet. So here we are. Not hero and partner, just two members of Team Love. Doobie's Valley is a pretty nice forest area. I like how the stairs look in this game. Always a relief to see one in the distance with that cool glowing effect, rather than just the typical boring gray staircase. Y'all might be confused why I chose Togepi, but upon hitting level 6, things begin to make more sense. Yeah baby, right into my veins. Also, I always thought Togekiss was kinda cool. However, then I decided to check the passive abilities of Togepi, and what the hell is this? Hustle? Buddy, I already miss enough attacks in these games. This is kind of a deal breaker. Like, there is nothing that annoys me more than missing an attack. Serene Grace is pretty cool though, especially with Metronome being able to roll attacks that can give secondary effects. John Reaper, Mareep, didn't have anything too special. Wait! Did y'all see that? Roll back the footage. Switch leader? Is this it? The best Pokemon mystery dungeon? Because yes, this game allows the player to switch party members from the very beginning. Hell, it allows the player to switch party members at all. Ain't that interesting, huh? This is very helpful for several reasons, such as if a party member is getting wrecked nearby, and being able to switch into them to make their decisions and helping with repositioning them within the group. Or scenarios where the party gets split up due to a warp trap, I can check to see if any of my party members are in the staircase room, switch to them, and let's get out of here. The most obvious use being to switch to party members when one is low on belly, which depending on the team comp, can severely underplay the importance of apples, but due to a later mechanic I'll talk about, this will be rare. I saw this as the first hint that the devs actually gave a crap about Mystery Dungeon's gameplay. I hope this is in Gates. I don't remember if this is in Super Mystery Dungeon, but it should be in all of them. Togepi was rocking some pretty rad moves thanks to Metronome. Meanwhile, Lameo Mareep was nothing but a tackle bot. Which, you know, after my experience with Explorers of Sky,
fucking tackle!
it feels nice to have moves. 7th floor marks the end of this dubious area, which is a surprising amount of floors for the first dungeon. We see the mentioned Shuckle, lost and stuck at a dead end. Upon approaching him, he asks us who we are, and we just run up on him like we're about to jump. Like, I don't know why this looks so sinister. But we let him know he's here to be saved, and we take him back. Back at the garden, everyone's happy to see Shuckle is A-OK. Slowking asks what Shuckle was up to, and we learn that Shuckle heard rumors of tasty food, and went out in the need for a taste of it. Narration text pops up to reaffirm that statement, telling of rumors being spread around about food, with nobody knowing what that food could be, or if the rumors are even true. And I know y'all are wondering when we're gonna move on from this silly Act 1 stuff and when the real plot is going to start. And, no. This is the plot. This is a game about food. As far as everyone is concerned, there's no delicious food at Dubious Valley. Slowking turns to us and thanks Team Love for our work with helping Shuckle. He also mentions having a small favor he wishes for us as well. Taking us deeper into the village, he shows us the request board, where Pokemon of the area put up their woes and problems. With more and more coming every day, and not enough people caring to help, Slowking asks us to form an adventure squad, resulting in one of like 2 cutscenes where the characters on the squad actually talk. I say yes, because damn, what else am I here for? I'm trying to squad up an adventure. Happy at this? Slowking hereby dubs us the Radiant Adventure Squad, Team Love. Slowking brings up that the name Team Love seemed to come out of his mouth on its own, saying it was something that was on his mind and he's not sure why. He asks if we vibe with the name, and yeah I do. I mean damn, I entered it like 10 minutes ago. Did they think I'd already regret it by now? The game continues to try to be meta, as I appreciate the animations the characters more universally have thanks to model rigging. He goes over the whole shindig of how the gameplay loop works. I always found the water in the well to be so oddly blue when compared to the water around. Like, I don't know, it looks especially weird at the Wildfire village. It's oddly drinkable. Slowking lets us know that even though we went in to help Shuckle with 2 Pokemon, we can now form a squad of 4. And everyone who didn't get chosen are already on the team. And even if they weren't chosen, it's still possible to change the names of characters anytime within the menu, for those wanting a fully named squad. With that, we unlock a new dungeon, Sparkling Fields, and that's about it when it comes to the story for a bit. Freedom blesses our D-pads, as we can now move around the town and meet the denizens. I like how the player can push the NPCs around wherever they want. That's pretty fun. Politoed might be my favorite character, with how you can see their two-faced thoughts. That's a fun character. I like them. But while we're here, let's talk about the town this time around, is what I would say. So yeah, no lie, I was looking through my squad, reading the characters and their passives and whatnot, and I just wasn't feeling it. I didn't want to be an electric type again, and nobody else seemed really fun. And I couldn't be a Psyduck because that's a water type. And we all know what happens when I choose a water type. So I just said F it and restarted the playthrough with Wildfire Adventure Squad instead. This is what I meant when I said the version I chose is a little complicated. I'll be sticking with Wildfire for the rest of this playthrough though. But the Switch did make me notice things, such as the save file having icons for all 3 games, with the player being able to connect and share Pokemon between the teams of Wildfire, Tempest, and Radiance. Which I don't know why you would buy the same game 3 times, but we are talking about Pokemon fans here. I'm trying not to judge. Going into Wildfire, first of all, the village here is kind of dull when compared to the foresty Radiance and the beachy Tempest. Like, I don't like how the Wildfire town looks. It was even oddly enough lagging my super special Wii I was using, so I had to lower the graphics a bit. Maybe it was the fog effect. It just doesn't look like a very pleasant place to live. It looked like I'd be coughing all the time. Some Pokemon have been changed around, but the story is still the same, with Shuckle going missing and a squad of adventurers showing up to help, this time being more of the reddish variety. This may make it look like I'm going to use a fire type Pokemon, but in reality I just chose 2 normal types, Baneri and Teddiursa. Well, now that we're in game with this team, let's see what they've got. What the hell? What is this? It's always something, huh? If the Pokemon holds an item, it doesn't do anything? Causes the Pokemon to become terrified and run away when their HP gets low? Why would I ever use this? This is awful. Why are you in this game? Teddiursa was decent, being one of those pickup fiends who also gets double speed from its status effects. At this point, I wanted to switch to Tempest, but y'all know the vibe. Anyways, I saved Shuckle again, so let's just talk about the town.
Man, shut your...
The town layout for Adventure Squad, which is the same no matter what version, it's just aesthetics. But the layout, yeah, it's the best one yet. Honestly, it's pretty perfect. First of all, it's all contained within one map, no loading screens. We have a single Kecleon who sells us items, no purple Kecleon. To the right is the Kangaskhan storage, next to the shop as it should be. To the left and up is where we go to save and enter dungeons, allowing the player to perfectly go down from the job board, check shop, check storage, and then get out of town. Fantastic. To the farther left, we have Duskull. I don't know why Duskull was the banker, like, I thought that was just going to be a one-time thing. Persian still made more sense, you know, but whatever. They're on vacation and they came here, I suppose. Later on, the left also has Slacking, which serves as the move rememberer and forgetter, with oddly no linking this time around, but trust me, there'll be something else. Another shop later opens up on the right, the Gastrodons. This couple provides familiar services, the pink one on our left being the purple Kecleon, selling orbs and TMs, while the blue one on the right is the appraiser for this game. As yes, enemies will be dropping boxes that we can pick up. With the somewhat sad removal of exclusive items, These boxes mostly have reviver seeds and gummies. So this town layout is pretty excellent. We start in the middle, so in order to go to the board, we always have to pass the shop and the storage several times. The only thing a little annoying is Duskull being to the far left, which means if I choose to deposit my money, I'll have to go there first if there's something at the shop I want. The storage system has a new mechanic called sets, which even though I never used sets, I still think it's really helpful and I'm glad that it's here. Basically, the player can set their current inventory as a saved set, and be able to pull out items from storage to fit into the ones saved. So I can make a set of the typical apples, bands, orange berries, reviver seeds, and escape orb, and be able to reload that set to the best of the game's ability, being notified if items are currently missing to not be able to fully complete that set. This can be really handy when it comes to speeding up the process of digging through the storage. Really nice addition. One negative thing, however, about the village is the processes for both move remembering and the appraisal services. Once again, the appraisal service has this cutscene that's cute at first, the Gastrodon not being confident until his wife cheers him on and he pops off, but then it's like, he does this every time. This is far longer than the Xatu cutscene. Luckily, the super special Wii I was using had a fast forward button, but it was still a time waste, and the same goes for the move rememberer, which is this slacking that like is super energized and just randomly shouts the phrase, "Are you awake? Are you awake?" in the middle of sentences that doesn't even make sense quite a few times. Oddball character. Their cutscene is funny, where in order to get a Pokemon to remember or forget a move, the slacking just runs into them really hard and they're like, oh man, here we go. But then it's like, you have to watch this every single time you want to relearn or forget a move, which to be fair isn't that often, but once you see the cutscene once or twice, it kind of loses the glamour, outside maybe with specific Pokemon. But yeah, for now, we don't have much to do but explore that new dungeon we just unlocked, and start doing some missions. Y'all may have noticed something I've pointed out but not spoken upon. There's only one bulletin board in this game. There are no outlaw missions. I guess the police force hasn't crawled their way into this continent, or where we're at yet. And well, yeah, the outlaw missions could be fun. I don't think it makes sense for the more friendly theme and chill vibe this game is going for. There's no crime here, just hyper Pokemon that may accidentally hurt us. I respect the decision to not include that for the sake of the game's tone. But if you're going to remove something, you should probably add something back to make up for it. There's nothing in terms of new mission types. It's still find item, find me, deliver item, escort me. There's nothing new I encountered. There are some quality of life improvements regarding missions though, such as the game letting the player know if they have any suspended missions they aren't taking, or warning the player when leaving a floor that has a currently unfinished mission on it, which as someone who did that a lot in previous games, I appreciate that. I did encounter one potential exploit, where I did a deliver mission, where I was supposed to meet a client on a certain floor with an item in my inventory. However, I escape orbed out of the dungeon near the beginning and it still acted like I gave them that item. Very odd. I never tried to replicate that, but it could be useful. I know I'm talking a lot about the gameplay stuff over story here, and that's because I kinda have to. As one thing to understand is that there really isn't much story to this game. Rather, this is just sort of a mystery dungeon sandbox. At the moment, I wasn't sure who my party was going to be made up as. Reminder, there is no main character in this game. It's whoever you want to make up your team, which being allowed to do that from the very start gives this game so much more freedom than any other Pokemon mystery dungeon. I enjoyed the Bard buff aspect of Eevee, but the buffing animation of Helping Hand takes around 8 seconds to complete, which was an instant deal breaker to me. I don't know, gonna be real, fire type Pokemon are kinda boring. Anyways, we're at the new dungeon, Cheery Fields. I love the music here. It's a sort of chill version of the Pleasant song. As I said, every dungeon theme is like a remix of one of 4 songs. It's not much, but the dungeons do switch up the music pretty often every number of floors. I think my favorite thing about this iteration of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is its pacing. It doesn't waste the player's time. From the very beginning, we can already have complete control of our party, we have max inventory space from the jump, and starting at the second dungeon, we can already recruit any Pokemon we come across, with the typical luck involved to do so, alongside all the regular rules. This game places the player gameplay wise at the very end of Explorers of Sky, and allows them to continue with most of the gameplay complexities introduced rather than slowly trickled to us. Another example is that this dungeon, the second dungeon of the game, already has traps in it. We went from traps being post-game only to halfway through the game to the second dungeon of the game. Hell, during the third dungeon of this game, I found scope lens. I was finding scope lens before finding bands and the like. This would never happen normally, but this game doesn't care, and I love that. This game was made for Pokemon Mystery Dungeon fans. It gives us all we already know, and we still haven't even gotten to the main mechanic of this game. To further cover on returning systems, y'all might have noticed I mentioned gummies. And yes, the IQ system is back. I always thought Explorers was the last time it was used. I don't think there's anything new. Maybe there's been some minor tweaks. I noticed throughout the game just some text changes, but with my memory I can never be certain on whether or not things have been actually adjusted. However, one thing worth mentioning is that most Pokemon now have an IQ skill that is turned off by default, known as Everlasting. Everlasting, when enabled, prevents the Pokemon from evolving. Because yes, Pokemon can now evolve whenever. Most notably and oppositely of every other Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, this usually occurs in dungeons, with the player being asked if they want to evolve, assuming they have Everlasting disabled. Some Pokemon still require items though. This is also the first game to introduce this fun little system where upon defeating an ally, an enemy will evolve on the spot, and can actually evolve multiple times with continuous takedowns, leading to a damn near undefeatable boss that you'll have to warp away. It definitely makes for a fun mid-dungeon interaction, and gives a sort of downside to Reviver Seeds, but overall, I can't really see a direct reason this mechanic exists other than it's funny. My answers on characters I wanted to use luckily got a reply on floor 4, when Teddy Ursa learned the move Fury Swipes. Like shoot, you got a multi-hitting move? Alright, you're in. Being early on and only having 2 dungeons that missions could be assigned to, I managed to slice through a ton at once, gaining some nice rewards and progressing my rank. The next day, Slowking gathers the squad. Seeing as we're getting used to the Adventure Squad life, Slowking warns us that things are only going to get tougher from here. And trust me, Slowking is more correct than y'all would think. Slowking decides to teach us a technique that will go on to become the defining gameplay mechanic of this game, that completely overrides the Mystery Dungeon gameplay we've come to know, and to be never seen in a future title. The Stack Attack. Slowking leads us to a hole he dug in the ground. This is known as a stack spot. Wanting us to use a stack attack against him, we enter a battle against Slowking. We learn that by jumping into the stack spot, we can have other teammates jump on us, combining our health alongside other benefits soon realized. The biggest note is that the Pokemon hopping on needs to be of the same size or lower to stack on the Pokemon beneath it, and a stack can't have more than 2 Pokemon of the same size. So suddenly, the size system, the unfun mechanic only made to nerf variety in team comps, is now an actual good thing, with a wide overhaul to every Pokemon having their size adjusted. This is a game about the big gamers.
I'm so big.
And if y'all want to make it in this world, it's time to get thick.
I'm so big.
It really makes the player consider comps in a way that I'll get more into later. The most important benefit of the stack system is that every Pokemon can use their moves at the same time. If I use a set move, every Pokemon in that stack will use their set move as well. Otherwise, I can individually choose each Pokemon's move. And this is it. The final evolution of the Link move system. And it's actually pretty awesome. we get to link with other Pokemon, creating endless combinations of moves and types that the original link system could only dream of. You know what? Screw linking in the earlier games. The link system always sucked and was always clunky. That's always been true, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. It was never fun to basically turn my already limited 4 moves into 3 moves, or even 2 moves and just become a one-trick pony. That joint's whack and something I never cared about for Rescue Team and Explorers. Plus, having to re-link every time these moves inevitably got broken by things such as PP traps was so irritating and pace-breaking. But these combinations of moves allow for so much more variety. I could have a team of snipers stacked up and just be able to group snipe enemies from afar, or combine ally buffs with attacks from other members. It creates such an interesting layer of team composition. The big downside to being stacked is that HP no longer regens naturally, which brings a whole new usefulness to healers and the moves that heal. I could end my stack with a recovery to keep the group healthy, and moves won't go off unless there's an available target. This may sound like PP hell, but it's actually PP heaven, and trust me, I know what PP heaven is like. That's because stacked partners do not use PP when attacking. I know y'all are immediately considering just how absolutely busted that could be with certain Pokemon in attacks, and I'll get to that. We utilize our newly learnt knowledge to stack attack Slowking, and we absolutely destroy him, resulting in what might unironically be one of the best scenes in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon history. That honestly stunned me. Like, that was a Mortal Kombat fatality, damn. Slowking is slapped, and we get this odd scene with this text on a black background, sad music playing as Slowking gives his final thoughts like he's about to die or something. And it just keeps going on about Slowking realizing he isn't as strong as he used to be, putting his faith in the player. Like, I feel like we're one random flashback away from this being a full-blown Pokemon Mystery Dungeon parody. The end? Just kidding. Then back with the tutorial text? Like, that was quite a long bit. This game has a strange sense of humor. The next day, Slowking seems to have recovered, warning us about monster houses. Other than that, it's back to the grind. There's a Munchlax that's been in town wondering where the food is at. I thought by having a lot of food in my inventory or something, like, there would be some reaction, but no. Just wants to know where the food is at, I guess. New dungeon here is Sunset Crag, which I'm not sure if it really captures the sunset aesthetic. Kinda just looks like a yellow swamp. But here we can try to Pokemon stack in the field. As I have only one star-sized Pokemon, I can only have a max stat of 2, as a stack can't have more than 2 Pokemon of the same size ranking. In this case, 2 1-stars. The first Pokemon I encounter in this dungeon is a Venonat. This may not seem important on face value, but if y'all have been paying attention to the footage I've been using, you may not be surprised when I tell you that this Venonat right here is the main character of this game for me. Very unexpected turn of events, but they're the one I gave all the gummies to and the one I controlled the most. This is aided by the fact that they were a 2-star sized Pokemon, allowing access to triple stacks. As the biggest, V's would have to be the leader, as if any other Pokemon tried to stack, Viz couldn't be involved as they were a higher star size than anyone else I had. Also, when compared to the Rumblefication of most Pokemon in this game, Venonat looks pretty normal. And if that wasn't already a win, look at Venonat's abilities. Like, wow, accuracy up, and I don't have to care about the elemental type system? This Pokemon was made for me. Gamer! So yeah, Viz sort of just fell into my lap and spent most of the game getting some suck. Continuing on with the stack system, we can now encounter enemy Pokemon who are stacking. These stacked baddies can also use multiple moves in succession and pose a very dangerous threat. The sight of these stack on stack battles is nothing short of magnificence, a thing of beauty. However, upon defeat, we get the combined XP of all the Pokemon in the enemy stack. This ultimately leads into a game where we fight a ton more Pokemon and gain a lot more XP without the game feeling like we defeated more enemies. It doesn't feel as dragged out per enemy. It feels like we just fought one enemy instead of 4. Levels come by extremely fast in this game, which is nice to always be improving and getting new attacks when compared to how long some of the droughts were in the previous titles. Just look at monster houses now. This is easily triple the amount of Pokemon seen in typical monster houses we're used to. Hell, there's even a new kind of item introduced into this game known as chocolates and cookies. These sweets giving the player XP to farther speed up the leveling process. They can sometimes be seen at the Pink Gastrodon store, but sometimes in dungeons I can just low-key run into the Kecleon candy shop. Snack up, cutie. We gotta talk about toppling, gamer. Players can do this naturally, usually a good idea if the stack is low on HP so everyone can individually regen, but there are many other interactions that can result in the loss of a single member in a stack or the full stack. Quite a number of traps can do this, from nuts dropping on our heads to getting our backs blown out to just straight up getting exploded on. Warp traps can also get that ass. Items can do it as well, most notably throwables such as thorns and gravel rocks, giving a whole new purpose to them in order to disarm enemy stacks. These are a must-have now. Most of the time, however, what's going to knock down a stack is the weather. Often I'd enter a new floor just for my stack to be completely toppled from random weather. Enemies can also do this, giving a secondary purpose to weather attacks. And that's the one thing I think is neat about the stacking system, and how the game revolves around the rules of it. Different items have become more important, like oranberries in order to keep the stack healthy without having to topple it, turns oranberries into a very important item. Thorns and gravel rocks are great defense against stacks, and the roll call orb, the orb that just sends party members back to the player's location, this is the most important item in the game. I'm not joking, these are more valuable than the likes of reviver seeds by a mile. Why? Because roll calls can create stacks from nothing. No need for an RNG hole, which can be clutch. That's what I like. The item balance that has always been so strict and unchanging, the stacking system causes an impact to that balance that shifts things up. It creates something momentarily fresh that I suppose no other mystery dungeon would ever be brave enough to perform again. Stacking has found its way to have echoing effects on every gameplay system that's been so static and rigid within Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. It affects the moves I used, the items I bring, and the Pokemon I attacked with. Sadly, I ended up getting knocked out on my journey. I know y'all are pointing and laughing that I got knocked out in the 3rd dungeon of the game. Haha, Spacey sucks. Well, we'll talk about that later. Back at the village, I find a mudkip saying that they came from the Tempest Adventure Squad beach. Buddy, don't tempt me to cross over. I do some more explorations, mixing successes with failures as I worked on my team, unlocking some new dungeons as well, such as Ruby Lakeside, which really showcases the water I love so much in this game. It's just so much more visually appealing than most of the dungeons in previous games. I'm not sure if I'm willing to believe it's because it's in 3D. Love this brass horn version of one of the dungeon songs, Big Bang. Throughout this dungeoning, I get my hands on the one and only natural gift, which if y'all remember the Explorers of Sky segment, I praised very highly. I couldn't find a dedicated list for what each item did for this game, but it seemed to perfectly follow the rules from Explorers. Interestingly enough, the seeds models are color coded to what damage type they do when used with natural gift, which is so oddly specific to base the entire appearance of an item on one move most people won't find or use. Meanwhile, other items such as orbs and most notably TMs aren't colored. Bands are colored though, and that's pretty neat. Though they really should have colored the seed icons in the menu, that would have helped a lot more. Farther explorations result in me ranking up to bronze, alongside unlocking the Gastrodons and the Slacking. Moving on to Marsh Valley, what can I say, I love the music here. I know water is sort of a present thing in all dungeons, but comparing this to Ruby Lakeside, and I mean sort of the same looking dungeon with a hue shift, still love how the water looks, and that wave effect crossing over the sand. Okay, believe it or not, we actually have some more story. One morning, we see Farfetch'd aggressively waddle through the village, yelling as if the f***ing forest burned down. Like, look at him go. Farfetch'd gathers the town around, claiming that they finally understand the wonderful food. To accent this shocking statement is what is, in my opinion, probably my favorite song in this game, Sweets. Because yes, this game is about food. Seriously, this isn't a joke, that's the plot. I really like this song. Farfetch'd said that they heard rumors of it from the next town over, that there's this place called Chocolate Cliffs, and at the summit of these cliffs is a treat called an amazing chocolate. Everyone is amazed by the sound of this chocolate, wondering what it could taste like, coming to an agreement that they'd like to taste it. Meanwhile, Team Love comes to an agreement. Viz steps up, saying that they're going to get the amazing chocolate for Shuckle. I mean, we could probably split it with everyone, but whatever. The village seems to be in agreement with this plan, as Team Love sets off. It's also nice that everyone in town alongside the shopkeepers have commentary on the story events still. So guess what? One thing about Chocolate Cliffs is that in the Wildfire Adventure Squad version of the game, a certain Pokemon shows up. One that I couldn't get during my Explorers of Sky playthrough, but wanted so badly.
Kiss me!
Yes. Porygon is here, and it is single.
Bravo!
Having the 2-star Nidorina on my team, I could finally achieve the full stack, which I hoped would help me through this dungeon. But unfortunately I ran into a monster house, used a decoy orb, a bronzer knocked out the decoy, evolving into an unstoppable Bronzong that thoroughly schwacked me. Well, damn. I will say a very nice advantage of having a full stack is that I can finally just turn back from monster houses to allow me to funnel in enemies. In other games I'd have to switch with my partner and put them at risk, or tell them to run away, which would cost me another turn of sitting in the monster house before they could move. Another cool thing about stacking is being able to utilize a Pokemon's unique mobile traversion better, as if the bottom Pokemon can traverse alternative tiles, they can now freely bring the entire party with them, which I really like because that ability of Pokemon in Mystery Dungeon never worked in a team setting where it'd usually lead to the group splitting up. You'd have to have a group of Pokemon that could fly, or a group of Pokemon that could cross water. The next attempt was one of ups and downs. Up-wise, I managed to get a Porygon on my team. It's so cool! Downside, I got knocked out again. I know y'all have a lot of questions about what's happening, and I'm holding back on some vital information on this game. I'll get to it. Trust me, there's a reason this is happening. Porygon was pretty neat. I'm going to go into talking about my squad later as it's more developed, but I do wish Porygon's conversion would change its type to the last move it used, rather than just a random move it had, including conversion. Couldn't play as Porygon much sadly, as it was 1 star. Kind of a downside of the size system. 1-star Pokemon are just kinda screwed and you can never really get to play as them. Luckily, on this next try of Chocolate Cliffs, I reached the summit upon departing floor 20. At the summit, we find it. Low-key just a chocolate bar here sitting out. You know, apples made sense because they came naturally from trees, but who's making these perfectly squared chocolate bars? But this is indeed the amazing chocolate. An incredible treasure which will bring joy to all. Team Love snatches the chocolate and heads back to the Pokemon village. The denizens encircle the chocolate in absolute amazement, many giving their comments on just how delicious this chocolate looks. Shuckle asks for permission to consume the snackage, and we remind him that we got the chocolate just for you, homie. Everyone watches in uncomfortably prolonged tense silence, the only sounds being Shuckle munching away at the chocolate.
That's a blessing.
When asked what he thinks of it, Shuckle describes it as super delicious, melting in your mouth, much to the awe of the villagers. Everyone seems happy for Shuckle, until suddenly, Tauros steps forward. Pushing Team Love aside, Tauros decides to claim the chocolate for theirself. Everyone is shocked, as Farfetch'd steps in with the counter, saying that the chocolate is all his. A heated argument begins as B-Barrel sneaks in, swiping the chocolate and running off to the goddamn hills. The villagers run after B-Barrel to beat their ass, and that's exactly what happens, resulting in one of the most brutal jumpings we've seen in a Pokemon mystery dungeon yet. Winning the battle royale, Numel runs out with the chocolate as the villagers give chase to the other side of the village, resulting in another violent smacking. The village has turned on each other and are tearing one another apart. The next morning, we see that most of the villagers are now upset, resenting one another and refusing to speak. Remaining with the only people left who didn't fall for the chocolate negativity, Slowking comments to Team Love and the 3 kids that the mood of the village has taken a down spiral. The kind friendliness between everyone has shattered. Shuckle says that it's his fault, and that he never should have went searching for the amazing chocolate in the first place. But Slowking believes that even if Shuckle didn't, someone else would have thanks to the increasing rumors, and that this situation would have happened inevitably. Aaron asks if there's any way that we can cheer the village back up again. Slowking isn't exactly certain, but does mention there's a place known as Treasure Valley, hosting a treasure rumored to bring happiness to whoever finds it. A treasure that will bring joy to anyone. But Slowking doesn't know how to get it, considering just how dangerous of a journey it is. Luckily, there's a crew among us that can help out. They talk amongst each other as Viz steps up. Slowking and the others are glad to hear this, but once again warns that the path to Treasure Valley is not an easy one, and will need considerable preparation. And buddy, Slowking isn't lying. Now in town, we can see everyone at odds with one another. Even the Gastrodons can't stand the sight of each other. I like the altered dialogue when appraising. Numel, that's just a vibe. Except for my Ko-Fi supporters. Y'all rule. So this may be a surprise to y'all, but Path to Treasure Valley is the final main story dungeon of Pokemon Adventure Squad. Yeah, we're at the end game, and I think it's time I can start talking about what I've been hiding from y'all. Remember how Slowking said this would be a dangerous journey? This dungeon took me hours. Hours of failures and retries and more failures. Hey, Spacey, you're losing at this baby-ass easy Wiiware game. Don't be mistaken, Corny. Despite the casual context of this game, this is the hardest final story dungeon out of any Pokemon mystery dungeon. Which makes sense, because this is by far, and I mean by far, the hardest Pokemon mystery dungeon game. It's not close. Y'all know why I keep getting knocked out? Because I don't have any Reviver Seeds. Reviver Seeds went from being near guaranteed at shops to being an extremely rare commodity. A lot of items in this game are. I didn't even have any bands on me at this point of the game because I had none left from getting KO'd so much. Enemies are nearly 10 levels higher than my party in this dungeon, and stacks can easily wipe the party. This game is basically a survivor horror, and I'm legit not joking when I say that. Often the best way to win fights is utilizing defensive items to get enemy stacks the hell out of the way, or attempting a topple, shooting the enemy with my limited ammo pistol using my 9mm Parabellum rounds. I almost turned into a Pokemon sandwich? Buddy, I am the Pokemon sandwich. Moments where my stack got toppled and there was no stack spots on the floor are some of the scariest and most intense tunneling moments. Several times I'd come so close to the end of the 25 floor dungeon only to get knocked out. Not only because the universal mechanics of this game are brutal, but this dungeon is stuffed to the brim with Drifloon who have the ability to double attack you, even while stacked. I have never felt so vulnerable in a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game than this one while not in a stack. Because going up against 4 stacks of enemies with boss levels of health is nigh impossible. Just look at this! I stand no chance against a 4 stack tower, and got my whole party swiped in one single turn. This is the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game that makes you feel like an NPC or an enemy. You don't feel like the main character, you aren't the hero. With how squishy everyone is in these games, getting attacked once in a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game could already lead to getting knocked out. But here, at times you have to hold 4 attacks, and it's like a slot machine starts rolling. And all it takes is one status effect or one random topple from an attack to instantly end your stack and your run. And considering how sparse Reviver Seeds are, I can only assume the game wanted the player to grind, and they wanted them to grind hard. I will say, this may all be partially because my team comp wasn't really the best. I know I haven't been talking about my party members as much, but I'm sure y'all have seen some mainstays throughout this journey. And that's because my party only really came to fruition after I beat the game. But here's the group I was going with so far. This game kind of reminded me of a previous game I looked at on this channel, Alvora Tactics, where there isn't much for a story or main characters. Rather, the main characters is the group of characters I make up myself. The main character of Pokemon Adventure Squad to me was Team Love, ideally resulting in me having a cast of colorful characters that I would use and switch between dungeons if this game was long enough, but it isn't, so I only had like 6 Pokemon I used. Viz was still here and still the leader. They had yet to evolve, thanks to me turning on the everlasting IQ, because one look at Venomoth and I was like,
Look at you. You're a mess.
Viz was getting all sorts of neat abilities from all the gummies I was giving them. I could haggle at Kecleon shops and dungeons for cheaper prices and bigger sells. Enemies had a higher chance of dropping loot boxes that I would lose when I inevitably got knocked out, alongside gaining more money for every Poke pickup in dungeons that I would also inevitably lose whenever I got knocked out. Move-wise, they were still leeching that life, giving some natural gifts, but now sniping with Psybeam, and a useful skill known as Stun Spore. Stun Spore attacks all around me. It doesn't deal any damage, but it gives the paralyzed status effect. It has high accuracy, plus Viz's already accuracy increasing ability, making it extremely useful. It also served as a filler command, so if I wanted to command my other party members to do something without using PP in one of my more important moves whilst in a stack, I could just use Stun Spore. It had high PP anyways. Seth the Teddiursa was the only lasting member from the original crew, and yeah, they've been here fury swiping and picking random things up since the very beginning. They have not changed at all. Moran was a Cubone turned Marowak that was a hard carry, bread and butter of the team. Marowak was huge because it's a 2-star sized Pokemon, and double 2-star Pokemon with double 1-star Pokemon is all I need for a 4-stack. Marowak has 2 very good things going for it. Number 1, Bonemerang. A ranged attack that hits twice and is super strong. The multiple hits allows me to defeat enemies and then attack anyone behind them, basically piercing. The only weak part about this is levitating or flying type Pokemon. That's when Moran kind of fell apart. The second thing Marowak has going for it is Lightning Rod. I probably won't have any footage to show for it, as it didn't show up too much in this playthrough, but for those who don't know, or, well, Didn't watch the Explore the Sky segment of this retrospective. Lightning Rod absorbs all electric type attacks, successfully removing electric type Pokemon from the game. But I guess all the electric type Pokemon are kind of chilling in Radiant Adventure Squad, so outside the rare Thunder Wave, Lightning Rod didn't proc too much. Moron was dope though. Total staple. Sweet the Porygon.
Oh my god.
I feel like Porygon by itself is just a strong as hell Pokemon, having that passive to give an attack or special attack increase depending on the opponent's lowest defense, alongside copying the opponent's potentially powerful abilities. I sadly didn't get to have too much fun with Sweet, never got the Porygon special Tri-Attack, and never found any Evo items, if they were even in this game, because as much as I like Porygon, Porygon Z is my favorite. So Sweet didn't really do much outside of side beaming and recovering, but credit where it's due, that recovery did nicely on healing the stack. The latest member, I actually got on one of my last attempts of this dungeon. Y'all have heard of Slade the Cacturn. Well, here's Cade the Cacnea. What's the relationship between the two? I haven't thought too hard on the lore of Team Love. Y'all gotta write your own fanfics on that. They didn't really do too much. They had Pin Missile, but they didn't live up to the sniping that Slade had, mostly just because they weren't a high enough level yet. There's still one more squad member I want to mention, but I haven't gotten them just yet. So for now, let's move on. I will say, I do quite love the autumn-esque aesthetic of Path to Treasure Valley, like, a lot. Like, shoot, we got orange trees and grass with purplish water? Wait till y'all hear about Plastern. Still, this game is just full of some great vibes I dig with. This game is cool, come on. But I think it's finally time I wrap this dungeon up. After hours of monster houses and slappings, we reached floor 25, thanks to the likes of Great Floor Luck. After an arduous journey, yeah, no kidding, Team Love has cleared the path to Treasure Valley, arriving finally at the Treasure Valley, which after taking the treasure, I guess we'll have to rename it. We arrive at nothing but a single treasure box, sitting before us. Could this be it? The treasure that could make everyone happy? Viz moves up to the treasure box, and cookies! Yay! Woohoo! You know, I was really expecting a boss battle or something, but this works. And not just any cookies, compassion cookies! Woo! Yay! Wowie! Well, okay then. The group brings the cookies back to the village. Slowking is like, wait, the thing that will make everyone happy is just more food? While they look delicious, Slowking is worried that introducing these cookies to the populace could cause a recycling of the amazing chocolate incident once again. But the youngins convince Slowking that if we share the cookies with everyone, then everybody will be happy. Slowking agrees with this, and we do a test with the village's two biggest haters, Farfetch'd and Sneasel. While it seems like they're still going to fight, eventually they settle their differences, and decide to split the cookie. We then witness other Pokemon around the village splitting their cookies. I'm sorry, it looks funny. Splitting their cookies and learning to share with one another. Girafarig even offering to deliver cookies to everyone who hasn't gotten one. Everyone seemed to be going back to normal. Aw, that's such a sweet ending. Truly the power of the communism cookies. Sorry, I had to make at least one joke. It was on my mind the whole time. Bunch of hip kids convincing Gramps about the new wave. There's a message here. But yeah, that's the game. Perhaps a bit of an anticlimactic ending, but I kind of like that there was no final boss. I mean, it's not like there was any villain to this game, so just throwing one in at the end wouldn't have really made a lot of sense. Besides the oddly absurd difficulty, I appreciate this game's laid-back tones. It's just a relaxing, short, little fun time. A nice refreshment that stands uniquely as itself when compared to every other Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game. At least in my opinion. Still not sure what Gates will be like. And the lack of a hero and partner setup is so nice. This game arguably focuses more on the adventuring aspect than any other Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. And I would love a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon that would just forego the played out human turn into a Pokemon shtick, and just be about a group of adventurers that we make, filling a world with interesting characters and adventurous scenarios. That's the ideal PMD to me. This game is sadly too short to really encompass that. Because character-wise, yeah, there really isn't much to this game besides Slowking. I suppose from a literal standpoint, Slowking is the main character. After that one scene where you got Mortal Kombat fatality, I was half expecting this game to go deeper on Slowking, the elder adventurer who's past his prime and is learning to accept that and pass the torch with his wealth of knowledge to newcomers. But the game doesn't really touch on that much, and that's kind of a shame. I heard some of these characters actually make it into Super, so it'd be rad to see Slowking again. But in the end, this game is more about the gameplay. And really, I was having so much fun with this game. Like, way more than I did with Explorers and Rescue Team. I was originally going to clickbait this segment like, this game is better than Explorers of Sky. Everyone would be like, oh my god, really? And then I followed it up with like, from a gameplay perspective. I like that this game just doesn't waste the player's time. We don't start with zero inventory, there's no slow build up of mission difficulties, no slow leveling. Progression is rapid, and they add on to it with a new system that mixes it all up. Everything comes together to create something. Oh, darn, this is a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game, right? Which means, yes, there's a post game to talk about. And, you know, maybe it's, maybe it's better if I don't talk about this post game. I'm gonna be honest, I meant everything nice I said about this game at the time, but the post game of Pokemon Adventure Squad kinda ruined the game for me. No intermission this time, we're getting into this. My save icon now has a golden Wildfire icon, which I suppose is some sort of encouragement to beat all 3 games on the same save file, which, yeah, each game does have some very different aesthetics between dungeons and Pokemon and all that, but I'm good. The true adventures of the Adventure Squad begins now. Yeah, we'll see about that. This post-game sucks ass. There's no story, so we can make this quick. Upon attempting to leave toward the dungeon, we encounter Entei, who offers to join us. Imaginably, the other versions have one of the other legendary beasts. Raikou for Radiant, Suicune for Tempest. Entei sucks. It's a 4-star size, meaning you have to play as it, and it has no good moves, no good passives. It's a miss. Maybe the stats are good, but who cares when everyone's 50 levels higher than you? A ton of new dungeons have opened up for the post game, and I decided I'd start with Wildfire Highland. Quite a few of these post-games dungeons start with a rather tiring theme of having weak Pokemon at first and slowly progressing to their evolutions, so I can't tell if this is a waste of time I'm not ready for until halfway through the dungeon. A new mechanic is introduced here. It's like these trampoline things. The leader hops on them and then on another Pokemon, causing the game to go into auto mode or something. I never used these because I didn't see any point of putting my life in the hands of the AI, especially with how hard these dungeons are. Y'all may have noticed, but we have a gamer among us, and yes, this is my final party member of note. Cool. There's a catchy too, it was a Spinda. Don't ask, it's a whole thing, okay? Why do I have a Drifloon? Wildfire Highland took me 2 hours to beat. This game goes full BS mode. They expect the player to grind hard, because everything in these dungeons, regardless of stack, just constantly one-shot you. It's like after the credits, they just expect the player to randomly start leveling up in the previous dungeons until they're like level 50, just to stand a chance against some of these. So I needed to fight BS with BS, and that's why Drifloon is here. Remember how I said stacked partner moves don't cost any PP? Yeah, at level 30, Drifloon learns Ominous Wind, allowing me access to a room-hitting move that I can use whenever I want as long as Viz has PP in one of their moves. And due to Drifloon's passive, it uses Ominous Wind twice. With how slow stat up animations are in this game, during monster houses I legit just got up and took a break while I waited for this crap to pass. Stacks arguably buffed and nerfed full room hitting moves, as these moves don't individually hit each Pokemon in the stack when compared to moves like Growl that do that. But that's not much of a nerf when I have near infinite uses of these attacks. It's so odd that this game introduced a new item known as Team Elixir, serving the purpose of refilling the whole party's PP. It's like at one point they wanted stacked moves to cost PP, but they decided not to do that. But sadly, even with Drifloon, things weren't enough. So, I had to do something I didn't want to do. Viz, I'm sorry. Here's the coin bread. Venonat doesn't learn Silver Wind, the bug equivalent of Ominous Wind. Venomoth does. At level 1. Sadly, we don't get Venonat's Compound Eyes accuracy buff ability with Silver Wind, as Venomoth has different passives. But regardless, I had a confident enough team that could hopefully bypass this dungeon without being forced to grind. And that's what happened. Reaching the 30th floor of Wildfire Highlands, something very surprising happened. Yeah, Groudon is here. Also, Venomoth's idol doesn't play during cutscenes, kind of distracting, it's like just hovering there. But yes, Groudon challenges us to an actual boss fight, with the blue line animations and even the song Defy the Legends playing. This is very surprising. For what it's worth, boss battles in this game are super cool. Here's what happened. First, the fight starts by removing the player's stack if they had one. I was in an off position, so I decided to back off, leaving Cool to fight off solo against Groudon. If this was Explorers, there would be nothing I could do here to help. But luckily, this is a good game, so utilizing the leader switching ability, I was able to take control of Drifloon, making it retreat to allow us a more advantageous position on attacking Groudon. Groudon went towards Cade, and they began to battle, missing attacks back and forth because the accuracy system in these games are ass. Speaking of which, I decided to boost Cool's evasion in the meantime. I had faith Cade could tank a hit, and when an attack finally hit, they did tank it. So then, I swapped into controlling Cade, and I backed up, forcing Groudon to now confront the newly evasively buffed Drifloon. Marin decided to walk up to Groudon because I don't know, I guess they wanted to throw. So now with distance, I could snipe with Cade, while Viz used Silver Wind from afar, as sturdy Maran and evasive Cool fought off the boss. I managed to utilize this leader system in a way to allow me to obtain the perfect positioning in order to overcome a foe far stronger than I. This is the level of stuff I want to do in Mystery Dungeon games, and one I was unable to do in previous ones. When I say this game has better gameplay than Explorers, I mean stuff like this. Instead of damn near every boss fight in Explorers being just me using some overpowered link combo, by removing the stack, they remove the link combos. It's like when a game where you spend all fights in a mech or tank finally says, alright, now for this fight, you gotta battle on foot. It's a whole new layer of strategy when anybody is susceptible to getting knocked out by one attack, and the boss can easily roll us if we don't take advantage of our individual abilities. It's a game of wit. not attritionally spamming powerful attacks while munching on the reviver chips until the fight is over. So with this strategy, we managed to defeat the boss without anyone getting knocked out. Half of us didn't even take any damage, it went so clean. Groudon, impressed with our gamer-like abilities, asks to join us. I never used Groudon. I mean, the next dungeon was called Rippling Seas. I'm not gonna take a ground type into that. So yeah, kinda sad from a gameplay stance that bosses were held back until post-game because that felt great. Anyways, onwards to Rippling Seas. I managed to get my hands on the Gone Pebble, another silly fake item. It was in Explore the Sky, but I never found it. It's a parody of the Geo Pebble, and here's what happens when it's used. Good stuff. Rippling Seas was pretty tough. I'll go into how absolutely toxic the design of these dungeons becomes soon, but it ends with a treasure room having 4 deluxe boxes. They contain some pretty rare items, ones that you don't see too often, such as a f***ing reviver seed, because yes, these items are that rare in this game, alongside a joy seed for an instant level I never used, and 2 IQ boosters. I never got any IQ boosters in Explorers, but they do as they say, increasing the Pokemon's IQ every floor when held. I believe different dungeons give differing IQ bonuses, at least for Explore the Sky. Next up on the post-game dungeons, we have Enigmatic Plains. This is a 24 dungeon that ends with yet another boss fight, this time against Moltres. This fight was a more traditional slapfest, so as I spammed Stun Spore and hoped for the best. Moltres joins us. I never used it. Next we have Bizarre Bluff, and let me tell ya, shit's about to get bizarre. I made it to floor 23, only for this to happen. This was my breaking point. I know I've been speeding through, but let me slow down and explain that this game went off the edge and became full-on Kaizo. This dungeon is so toxic, filled to the brim with silver winding Ledians in stacks just spamming. Of course with the incredibly over-leveled Pokemon as always. And it's here, I actually realized something I didn't want to. I really didn't want to. At this level, I don't like the stacking system. It's unfair. It's so against the player, it's amazing. At this point in the game, if you aren't constantly in a stack, you're prone to, well, this. But there's no way to consistently stack. When every floor there's some weather to instantly ruin the stack you took several floors to find. Hey Spacey, just use a roll call orb, right? What roll call orbs? I haven't seen one of those since the beginning of the game. This game becomes a total luck fest of praying to get stacks and not having stacks ruined. Because what happens when I'm stackless? Well, I get sniped across the map by a stack of Ledian spamming Silverwind. Quite literally an impossible combination of moves to survive. If that toxic design wasn't enough, these dungeons being 20 to 30 floors don't seem like much, but they take hours because of the monster house spam. It felt like damn near every floor was a tiring war with monster houses. By the end of this, you know, I was suddenly pretty glad that Super Mystery Dungeon removed the random monster houses. They take up so much time. Fueled by my hunch that they most definitely increased the spawn rate of enemy Pokemon, I found naturally recovering health to be extremely difficult in this game. Pokemon are constantly hounding the player, and with every run through a tunnel being a chance I run into a stack and die, it made exploration so tiring. That's because of this absolutely awful mechanic I never liked in these games, where if I B-dash into an enemy, I'm forced to take an attack from them. Like, why not just stop me from dashing, just stop the dash when there's an enemy on screen? That's not bad when I run into one enemy and I have to hold an attack, but when I randomly run into a 4 stack and suddenly have to hold 4 attacks back to back, I can't survive that. Not when these Pokemon are already overleveled. Why bother with B-dashing if it's only going to punish the player for playing the game? So my only option is to play this game in the most slow-paced, boring way possible. I'm talking no running, just slowly walking through rooms, throwing thorns down every tunnel to check for enemies. I know what it's like and I know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't want to. It's not that I find slow-paced games boring, but I find that playstyle in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon to be. It doesn't earn it. Not when I just slowly plod through these boring basic-ass randomized rooms and tunnels with repeated designs bordering the edges. I'd rather just not play. I decided to just give up on Enigmatic Plains and head elsewhere. I had this unknown village dungeon opened up to me randomly, but it's like I'm already pissed off and the last thing I want to do is be reminded of Aegis Cave. I'm good. I went to the last dungeon I saw, Secret Island. I will say one nice thing, Secret Island might be my favorite dungeon visually. It really expresses that water I love. Having floors constantly shifting the palette and color of the water. It's very visually pleasing. So, what happened this time? Well, this. Yeah, alright, I'm done. No thanks. Not to mention, this dungeon was full of ghost types, which if that wasn't annoying enough, it was ghost type stacks, allowing ghost types to stack non-ghost type Pokemons and just spam 4 attacks on us through walls. I can't do this. I'm good. This is where I dropped the game, much like the game itself did. This game falls apart at post-game. Its sudden and brutal difficulty skyrocket encouraging the player to grind begins to reveal the faults of its systems and mechanics. I've seen other people try to play this game and quit during this grind session of a post game. It asks too much for so little. To be fair, this is somewhat of a me issue. During the final play session, I was in a very angry mood, but that's just who I am. Some days I roll a mood that can be rather impatient and pissed off, and sadly, this session had that spacey. Though I also wonder if I would have quit regardless. When a game starts wasting my time, and I'm suddenly sitting and thinking about the game I haven't worked on in days because I'm trying to make weekly content on YouTube, then that's when I know that it's time to throw in a towel on a game. I know it's kinda sad, and I do regret it. This is a super mysterious mystery dungeon game. There probably isn't too much footage or info on the post game and what these dungeons hold. But at the same time, if I can guess the pattern, is it worth wasting several hours of my life in attempts just to say that this dungeon had treasure boxes or some boss at the end? Spending several hours leading into around 3 sentences read in about 10 seconds for this script? I don't think so. You know what other games don't have a lot of footage or info about them? The brilliant indie games I constantly review, created by beautiful and passionate people. And at the end of the day, I got the gold badge, I completed the story and there isn't any more. I beat the game, played some of the post game, but didn't do everything. It's not any different from how I treated the other games. And I'll deliver the brave assumption that there isn't much interesting to the post game in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Adventure Squad.
This game's too small for an extended plotline, so we'll just make you grind to make it seem like this game is long.
No thanks. But I still want to end things positively. One option I did have to speed up the end grind was utilizing buddy codes. Yeah. Buddy codes were these codes handed out in events, manuals, and the like, giving us access to super secret hidden Pokemon, regardless of version. I suppose ones of note would be some legendaries like Manaphy, and even the first appearance of shiny Pokemon in Mystery Dungeon. These codes have been changed in the translation, but the codes themselves can be found by utilizing the operations guide from the home menu. However, I also had a file with the translation that just listed the codes. Doing this side by side rather than constantly going back to refer to the operations guide was a lot more convenient, though I will say that the Rosa raid code on the readme in my translation folder had an error, so look out for that. If y'all really want to do the post-game content for Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Adventure Squad, I highly recommend using buddy codes. That's because while some of these Pokemon seem mundane, they can come at varying levels. I'm talking some of these Pokemon coming at level 50 out the box. And that can really help with battling with all the irritation these post-game dungeons provide. It still doesn't really make them too interesting or fun though. Apparently there are also event Pokemon that can be accessed via the internet, I believe, which the translators have shown their effort by restoring these online exclusive events. It seems like some of them may have some sort of interesting cutscenes and the like with them, containing Pokemon such as Giratina and Arceus, making this the first Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game where the player can recruit Arceus. Yet another example of something fans thought was a first in a future Mystery Dungeon, but was actually done in Adventure Squad first. However, I tried for a bit, but I was still, pissed off. At first I couldn't even access the home menu, it would just crash. Y'all might be wondering how I booted this game up on my super special Wii without using the Wii home menu. And now's not the time for those kinds of questions. But even after figuring things out, I just couldn't focus. My mind was basically melting and running 50 kilometers a minute. I needed to cool off, but I knew this was my last session and I wanted to make it count. It sucks that I failed to deliver and respect on everything the translators have done for this game, but I don't want to continue playing a video game that makes me feel bad, frustrated, and stressed out. I played video games to get away from those feelings. So with my admittance of failure, I'm going to wrap things up and give my final overall thoughts on Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Adventure Squad. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Adventure Squad, if anything, proves to be the most unique Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game. From tone, aesthetical graphics, character designs, gameplay, to even the anomaly of this being this untranslated Wiiware game, it's interesting. I don't want every game to be like Explore the Sky. Every game needs to have that dark edge. It's okay for some to be like this. And I know this is what people didn't like about Gates either. Call it underwhelming, but for all the random jerks and villains of the previous games, having a game that had no bad evil villain is just refreshing. And that's the key word. It introduces awesome mechanics which, while I ultimately don't want to see return in future games, was still fun to mess with and see a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game that decides to shake up the meta and present ideas with the power to encourage me to use and see this game differently. Hell, some of the creative and fun ideas do show up in the later games and people love those ideas. And those games have Adventure Squad's silly ideas of design to thank for that. I honestly did have more fun playing this game up until post-game than I had with any other game in this retrospective so far. I think it delivers a version of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon that I find quite satisfying. A laid out game that isn't trying to follow in the footsteps of a game it knows it could never match up to, instead shining to be itself by going in a far different direction. Perhaps it is much like the shallow joy of a sweet candy. A sugar rush at first of incredible taste that eventually wears off, where for those who care enough about their lives, can only wonder about the damage they've done to their body afterwards. It's a novelty game and by far the most unique Pokemon Mystery Dungeon to my knowledge. I recommend it for those interested in the gameplay of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, because I feel like it was made with that audience in mind. It's challenging, it's strategic, it was made for the fans in a very different way to how I can say that Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon was made for the fans. It's really not that long. If y'all stop at post game, it should be around 8 to 10 hours. And trust me, I recommend stopping at post game just about as much as I recommend this game. Overall, I'm glad I played it. And I'm so thankful for the squad that translated this game into English. People can cry and moan about whether or not a game that they personally view as negative for no reason deserves translating, but in my eyes, I saw this as an opportunity to fully experience a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game I hadn't yet, and I was curious on, and I can give a big thanks to this group for helping me accomplish that. This video wouldn't be possible without y'all taking the time out of your day on this free project. But speaking of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games I'm yet to play, next up is Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Gates to Infinity. I know literally nothing about this game, but I'll say with all the hate I see it get, I can either see this being my least favorite Pokemon Mystery Dungeon or my favorite. I think it's going to be a game with a lot of interesting ideas and tone that I have a good feeling I'll find appreciation in. Honestly, kind of felt a lot about how I thought I'd feel about Gates with my ultimate thoughts on Adventure Squad, interestingly enough. So until then, I'll see y'all next time on the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Retrospective. Kenshiago! Seltris! Did I get y'all? Hey, I'm sorry, I was put up to this, okay? And Sugar Snaps as well. Gamer. This video took a lot longer than expected. Even before all the disaster, I've just been in a really down mindset. And then I started going through a relapse, and then the final touch, my hard drive crashing and almost losing all my footage. Luckily, I recovered basically everything, but doing that and having to replace all that has unfortunately costed me the bracket known as an F ton of money. Some of y'all came through with the support, I appreciate that. These Ko-Fi donations kinda actually do allow me to keep making videos. So yeah, week has been kinda hell, but I guess that's nothing new for me. I'm gonna let the original outro play now. Cool! Had to change my voice a lot during this video by taking breaks and doing a lot of things to help me change my voice, because I didn't really like how obnoxious I was sounding. But hey, thanks for watching the video. You know, I had to change my voice a lot for this script, you know? Like, I didn't like how, I sound so annoying and I hate it. But people always say, oh, you sound so emotionless, I'm not gonna watch this crap. Well, I think I sound annoying when I'm not. Y'all will probably hear my voice change a lot throughout this video, and that's just with my emotions. But yeah, that's really all I have to say. The weekly videos are dead now. I'm just gonna upload whenever. And that's a good thing. The weekly videos are never going to last. Not when I have a game I want to work on as well, and I've been missing that game. So, yeah, catch y'all in the next one, baby. I'm out of here.